We often get a lot of questions about how the River Murray water resources are shared. So this is a schematic provided by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority that shows a number of key locations. So if we start up the top of the headwater catchment areas, you can see Dartmouth and Hume Dam. They're two really critical storages for South Australia. So we get a share of the inflows into those storages, along with one of the key tributaries being the Kiewa River in Victoria, which is all upstream of where the Red Point at Albury is. So we typically get a 1/3 share of the inflows above Albury. Anything else that's flowing in downstream of Albury, if it's coming from the left-hand side of the river being Victoria, or the right-hand side of the river being New South Wales, those states retain access to that tributary water. So South Australia doesn't get a share of that water. You can often see quite big improvements to Victorian allocations. That's as a result of them having access to tributaries which are quite high yielding, like the Ovens River over in New South Wales. There's been a gradual reduction to the inflows in those tributaries over a longer period of time, and that's part of the reason why over the last few years allocations have tended to be a bit lower in New South Wales, because there has been less tributary inflows coming in to the Murray system from the New South Wales tributaries. The Darling River, on occasions, water can be provided from Menindee Lakes. There's a whole load of rules around when water can be provided from Menindee Lakes. There's a rule of there has to be more than 640 gigalitres sitting in storage for states to have access to some of that water sitting in there. You might be aware there's been recent rainfall and inflows into the northern section of the basin. At the moment, there's only around 244 gigalitres. We also get inflows into Lake Victoria, which are important for supplying South Australia with its entitlement flow. We are putting together some more basic information on how the water is shared between the states, which will also be available in the coming weeks on our website. So the way in which the River Murray water resources are shared, we've put together a simple illustration here to show people how that water is shared. So if you're looking over on the left-hand side of the slide, we have the rainfall and the inflows occurring into the storages. So think about this bucket diagram here as the collective storages in the southern basin that the Murray-Darling Basin Authority has control of. So first requirement that needs to be met, and this is all under the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement, is the conveyance water. So that is the water which is required to run and deliver basic requirements in the main channel of the River Murray system. So that includes 696 gigalitres for South Australia and the conveyance requirements upstream of the South Australian border. The next water to be provided is the component for critical human water needs. So collectively, 342 gigalitres between the states. The next lot of water to be set aside is the conveyance reserve. So that conveyance reserve is set aside for the following year. So we're coming into 2021. There'll be 225 gigalitres which is set aside from the start of 2021 for 2020-21, 22 to ensure that there's sufficient water in there as a reserve to help meet that conveyance requirement in the following year. So any of the other inflows that occur beyond that point is essentially what is divided up and provided to the states, for the states to then allow for allocations to occur to the range of different products, which is outlined on the right-hand side of the screen. So in South Australia, we have one product that's all high security. In New South Wales, they have, this is for the Murray system, two products, high security and general security. The bulk of their water on the Murray, somewhere around about 85% of allocations on the New South Wales Murray, is tied up in general security allocations. There's also the Victorian Murray High Reliability Water Share and the Victorian Murray Low Reliability Water Share, and both states, like New South Wales, have carryover in the upper storages. So when the upper states are provided their water availability assessment by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, they meet their carryover from that bucket, whereas South Australia, we have an independent storage right, and our storage right doesn't form part of the volume of water which we're advised we have access to by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. So on to the following slide, calculation of state water shares. So we receive regular advice from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority about how much water is available in the system and who that water belongs to in the system. So there's a complex set of water sharing rules which are available under the Murray-Darling Basin Agreement, but again we're going through a process now about simplifying what appears under the agreement to put it out in like a frequently asked question type document, because it is obviously it's quite a heavy document to read at points in time. So the calculation of the state water shares include the volume of water held in storage that each state holds at the end of the month. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority needs to take into account water in the whole of the system, including the volumes of water in transit, how much water is being consumed through both transmission and evaporative losses as water flows down through the system. So the Murray-Darling Basin Authority runs a very complex set of water accounts. So in addition to that, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority undertakes a regular assessment of how much water is likely to be contained in the River Murray system under a range of different scenarios, ranging from at the very dry end of the scale, minimum inflows type territory, up to very wet type conditions as well. So those forecasts that are provided from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority allow the states to look forward in time, picking a range of different scenarios to determine what the amounts of water may be available under a range of different scenarios. So we then feed that advice we receive from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority into our River Murray Water Allocation Plan, and we have a whole series of water sharing rules under the River Murray Water Allocation Plan for South Australia. Now, in terms of the announcement time frame, I'm hoping people have been have familiarised themselves with this, because this is the same information that we put out last year. So as we've indicated last year, and again this year, we'll be provided with the water availability forecast by the Murray-Darling Basin Authority in April, which helps form the opening minimum allocation announcement on the 15th of April. And then what we do going forward, we then reassess the total volume of water available, and then we'll actually, like last year, provide further updates to that in lieu of the actual opening allocation announcement, which will be made available from 1 July. So in mid-June, we'll be coming out and saying this is going to be the opening allocation from 1 July, but just bringing people back to the outlook which I talked about before. So there are some promising signs there in terms of improved rainfall and inflow conditions. It's really important that people also get their meter readings in time. That's important from a calculation of carryover from a carryover point of view. And then carryover will be granted come September if people are eligible for having access to that private carryover, and they need to demonstrate underuse. Okay, on to the next slide. So what we'll be providing next week will be the minimum opening water allocation statement for the 15th of April, and then again monthly until 15th of June. And that will include information on the projected minimum opening allocation, availability of carryover for 2021, information on how much water is held in storage, and it's really important that people do track how much water is going into the storages. And what you'll see as storage volumes hopefully improve, then that information then gets provided back to us through the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and then we update the outlooks going forward. We'll provide information on a range of potential allocations under different probability scenarios, so pretty much the same information that we provided last year and during the Millennium Drought. So we'll continue to provide fortnightly water allocation statements until allocations reach 100%, which was the same process that was adopted for the 2019-20 water year. So the way in which the water allocation framework in South Australia works, so this is taken from the River Murray WAP. So over on the left-hand side, this is showing you the breakdown of the different components of the South Australian entitlement flow. If you were to get 1,850 gigalitres, certainly we're not anywhere near that space in terms of the outlook for next year, just on the basis of the low volume of water we're seeing in storage. So over on the right-hand side, This shows you how water will be shared as we get the advice from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, feed that advice through our River Murray Water Allocation plan. So first priority is around providing for dilution and losses in the river. Second priority is around providing for critical human water needs requirements, and then getting water being made available to classes 1, 2 and 5, and then following that, priority 3 is providing water for class 3 and class 8 allocation. So obviously class 3 is where the irrigation entitlements sit in South Australia. So we'll, obviously, as we get the advice, we provide that information out to the irrigation community to let them be able to make decisions around what scenario they want to look at going forward. So in terms of the probability scenarios that we're putting out again this year, we've done this to basically provide people with a suite of tools and information that they can use to plan ahead for the forthcoming season. Again, these scenarios will be updated on a regular basis when we get the advice from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and they're to be used as a guide to the likelihood of future irrigation allocations. Now, the information that goes into the probability scenarios, they are based on both historical plus forward-looking River Murray system modelling, so it's about the inputs and the rules under the Water Allocation Plan, which is basically the output which allows us to pull together the probability scenarios. So I've got an example in here on the table from 2019-20. So this is what we put out back in April, that was showing the potential opening allocation of 14% at that point in time, and then how allocations may improve under those different scenarios over time. So if we picked a 95% scenario, which is the extreme dry condition, that was showing back in April, we'd have 23% by September, 43% by November, 52% by January, and 57% by April. This year we've had inflow conditions better than that 95% scenario, so that was the reason why we ended up with 100% allocation much earlier than what was being advised in the outlook at that point in time. We're also graphing that as well, so people can look at it from two different points of view, whether it's in a table form or a graph form. People can follow each different scenario how they would like to. So again, it's really important just to keep an eye on how the storages are going, what the climate outlook is showing at that at that point in time, and also forward looking. So put emphasis on looking into the Bureau's different products, and particularly pay attention to those 3-month outlooks. So just in summary there, we are seeing an improvement to the River Murray system inflows. We're committed to providing regular information to enable any water users or interested parties to use that information to make informed business decisions. A lot of us in the department are accessible. If you want to ring us up and have a talk to us, we're more than welcome to step people through this process. If we don't, if people don't quite understand the information today, by all means get in contact with us and we can step you through it. An important point to note is when our water availability gets to 1,496 gigalitres, so just under 1,500 gigalitres, that is equivalent to 100% allocation. So it's a very important point for people to remember, and I think last year a number of people may not have sort of realised that fact, even though we put it out there. It's just reinforcing that fact at 1,496 gigalitres, it is at 100% allocation. It's important to note people need to start planning for that low water availability at the start of 2021, but we are seeing improved inflow conditions, we're seeing an improved rainfall outlook, but what's critically important is the inflows over the next couple of months, in particular winter and spring, and that will, by the time you get to the end of spring, you have a pretty certain idea about your water availability going forward, and that's obviously quite important for what people plan to do in terms of irrigation over the summer and autumn. And as we always tell people, don't be afraid to ask questions and come and seek advice, whether it's advice through primary industries or the Department for Environment and Water. I just can't reiterate that fact enough, that come and ask us questions if you need to. So in terms of where people can access information from, I've listed a number of websites they have quite a lot of information contained in those websites. So for South Australia, we've got the website listed. For New South Wales, we've got the website listed, similar to Victoria and the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. So I'd encourage everyone to go and have a look at those websites as well to familiarise themselves with what is happening in both New South Wales and Victoria. We'll also, obviously, when we're putting out advice, we'll put out information on what the allocations are in New South Wales and Victoria and any links to relevant information that they provide as well. Thank you very much.